Oh, Roy just arrived on time. Hi.
Hey,
So
hi.
this is the Drupal usability meeting for June 13th, 2017, and I just started the broadcast when Roy joined. Hi. So we have a few topics for today. Chris suggested multilingual layouts, Aaron suggested Commerce Setup Wizard, and Roy suggested make action links on the extend page available on small screens. And since Chris and Emily were there first, let's do the layouts multilingual topic first.
Okay, sounds good. I will do a screen share. And we're just working on how we should handle multilingual layouts in the new layout builder.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the context here. Let's see. Okay. This. So there are two ideas of how we could do this. So we have one here, which would be a select list, but that's kind of a new pattern. So it's just a new idea for how you would select the language once you're on the layout tab. And then the other one is using these subtasks. So you would have the layout tab, and then your language is available as subtasks here. And some of the other things have changed since we previously reviewed this in UX calls, like this layout tab here instead of using the toolbar. And so for now, we're making everything work under this layout tab while edit modes and toolbar are being worked on as a kind of separate project. And then the goal is once that UX is ironed out, then we could move the layout builder back up into the toolbar. So does anyone have any thoughts on this concept of either subtasks or a select?
Is this the only way? Go ahead.
So what's a multilingual layout? Let's define that.
Yeah.
First. So
okay,
sure.
Same question.
Yep. So so the idea is that you would have a completely different set of sections on a different layout. So if you clicked the other tab for German right now, you would only see add section, and you would have nothing else on the page, and you would basically completely build the layout anew.
Yeah. So for each language, it has a specific layout, which you need to do one after another. So you said
So the idea
create one layout
completely different
for each language.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah.
And so that's another question: is what do people think of that too? Is that what most people would expect?
I would say that's likely a nice feature, but I'm not sure that it's an 80% use case to have completely different layouts for different languages on the same page. It may be much more common to have your views / whatever blocks you have on there be different per language, which by themselves they already are most of the time. If your view is set up to filter by language, just a lot of the blocks and different displays in core are set up right now. So I think ideally it would have a feature where somehow you would have the same layout for every language, and you would have an option to deviate from that default. But I'm not sure that this UI is enough to express that. Like if you only have the English tab and you don't have any other tabs, you would not expect the others to be the same, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So it may be more like how views works, where you have a master and then you can deviate from that in other displays and make stuff different if you want, but you don't necessarily need to make stuff different.
Okay.
That may be too complex for an MVP, but It's
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I think from a feature perspective, one of the reasons we had pursued this is because it's like kind of technically the logical endpoint of what someone might ask for when we need this sort of feature. And it was actually in some ways the easiest thing to also do. So like worst case scenario, at least they have a nuclear option that will work.
Yeah.
We also
this
had
is the. I agree. This is the most special case that allows for the most specialization, the most customization. So in that sense, it allows for a lot of flexibility. But I'm not sure that 80% would need the flexibility.
Do you need to incorporate that flexibility now to be able to have it later?
We
Go ahead, Emily.
don't have to expose a UI for it. We kind of already have the technical handling for it built, just as kind of a side effect of how the things are built. But we could leave the UI out, but then at that point you wouldn't have options to do another page. You would only see the default layout and you just wouldn't have the tabs.
Yeah, and then you'd install the contrib multilingual layout module, and maybe that could expose that, or
Oh yeah.
8.7 ships with, or I mean, this is these are like sensible options. I think we've toyed with the idea of the select list in other situations earlier. Maybe just didn't do it. I would be interested in exploring that version. Yeah. So that would have as UI have, I think, my initial preference. Do we need to make a decision on whether to pursue this now? If so, then I would say leave it out for now. At least as a UI. I mean, if the technical underpinnings are in place.
Okay. Yeah, if people are in agreement that this is more complex than we would need for multilingual for now, and isn't needed, then I think we could leave the UI out for now. I know we were trying to meet some
Hope
kind of.
not to disappoint.
Yeah, I think from our perspective, we thought that we needed something for multilingual, that people would need something. So it's interesting to hear that it sounds like that might be less.
Yeah, I would also just add to that like one of the, we've got Panelizer and in Contrib, and one of the things that it has consistently had shortcomings on is multilingual stuff, and it's something we hear semi-regularly, which was part of our drive to have a solution out of the box in core that at least addressed it.
Yeah, I think it's too much of a clean slate if every language starts out empty. Because if they are at the same page, just in different languages, you would likely have some similarity in terms of content and some similarity in terms of structure, and maybe some difference. But if they are truly the same page, just in different language, like as a concept, then you would usually have a lot of the same things as a concept on the different language pages. So you would more likely look for some way to do small alterations to the same base than to have two entirely different layouts with entirely different pieces of things. Or even if it's the same, you would need to rebuild them manually every single time. So I think like little alterations are more likely if they are language variants of the same thing, and you could do that with whatever block visibility. If these are blocks, that's language block visibility, or you could do that with views filtering and language render options and other things if they are views. So the subparts of the page could be altered with existing options that are not tied to layouts. And they are not very well exposed maybe on this UI, so maybe they're not evident that it's possible. But I think the user need is more like small alterations if it's truly the same page with just language differences. If they are entirely different pages, then it may not logically belong as one page in different language.
Yeah, if this UI basically, I mean, enforces a clean slate, and basically rebuild of every language variation, then I'm not sure this UI would be sufficient or good enough in that sense, because I too would think that cloning this page and then adding the regional section for the French part of Belgium or the French politics section to this page of a Belgian newspaper. That's the use case I would think of initially, and then rebuilding from scratch every time.
So would it be better? We could certainly clone the first one to the second one when it's created. Would that be better?
I think so, yes.
I think it is better, but then it could become a maintenance issue, right? If you need to make the same change across each of them. So that's why I was referring to views as a baseline, at least, of having a master and then deviating from there, because then you could have a baseline that's inherited. But that's a lot of logical complexity to understand for a user and to expose in the UI.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely not MVP.
One of my other worries with like your enumeration about block visibility, which was actually a conversation we had earlier today, is that like that's really great when you need like a surgical implement to go in and change out like maybe 1 or 2 blocks on a page. But you know, if you had like a site with 10 languages running on it, you certainly wouldn't want like a layout with 10 blocks that were, you know, controlled via some visibility condition all in the same region, like replicated region over region. And so that's just kind of like, that was some of what I was worrying about when we were talking about doing this, and why having like the clean slate option felt nicest in like those larger scenarios.
Yeah, but then, so if you have 10 blocks and 1 for each language and each has a block visibility for that language, the question is if you have like 5 other blocks or 8 other blocks that are the same across every language, then if you need to change those 5 blocks, then you need to change them 10 times if they are different language layouts that are independently edited. So they're both, there's arguments on both sides, I guess.
Well, let me totally go off the rails, and I'll just apologize to Emily right now. What if we had like language level controls per section, so you could pick which sections you wanted to have like language level overrides for?
That could be cool. Yeah, that would be much more in line with like the need for having a customized area for a specific language, and then you can have the same like a base for everything and have this area where the local news are printed. Like if you have a news corporation that has magazines all across different countries, and then you have some global news, and then you have some local news, and then some of the sections would be local. Yeah.
But that's a new idea, right?
Yeah, and I have no idea how we represent that visually. No, that totally just was out of nowhere right now. So,
Mhm.
which is why I was apologizing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I said, that the language dynamics are not exposed on the layout UI otherwise, but they are sort of embedded within the things that are being displayed. But the section itself could consist of multiple blocks, and then the section itself does not have a language dynamic at all. So if we add language dynamic to the section, that's definitely an option. But then you need a way to somehow swap out the section per different language.
We would also have complexity because you could add a language condition on a block that's inside of a section that has its own language setting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I think
The
when
section. Sorry, go
I'm
ahead.
hearing let's do this. Let's not do this now.
Yeah, I think the use case that I was thinking of when we first came up with this was, like I know MongoDB had different pages for language, and so you'd have a different front page for every language, and they were almost entirely different because they had very different marketing depending on the different places. So that's, in that case, I think that's somewhere where the blank slate makes sense. But if that's not the most common, then contrib might be the good way to do that.
They all happen. Small regional tweaks, wholly different front pages based on language and everything in between. I remember working on a site that had garden tools and bits and bobs, and they had very different product offerings in different countries. Some editorial content was to be shown, but not here. There we show the other thing, and here we only do business with businesses and not consumers. It's pretty hard to I'm thinking it's not. Sorry, I'm not sure we can come up with a general 80% multilingual application. At least not on this call, right?
Yeah.
And it will be hard to find. Either we collect 20 sites where we see these happening in a way and see what people do. I'm not comfortable making a gut call on what is the 80% here. So
Okay.
I would say leave it out. It sounds like the architecture is mostly in place. Maybe that section idea needs some consideration, but I think it's easier for you to estimate what the additional complexity or what the technically would need to be added to make that a possibility. But let's now make sure that making multilingual variation is not impossible later.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah, I was looking at a few examples. Like I would have thought that Wikipedia is the same page / layout regardless of language, but it's not true. Like I switched around the Wikipedia front page, and some have in the news section, some have the daily picture section on top, etc. So it's not the same. But if you go to like Europa.eu, which is the European Union website, then it's totally identical for every language. You switch language and it's the same content, same images, same header, everything same, just same layout, same sections. It's just different language. So yeah, depends on the use case. Pretty much. Yeah, I'm a bit concerned. Like we could expose this UI with a switch or something, and we don't show it by default, or we have an option to make layout entirely different per language and only show this option in that case. But I would be concerned to show this UI as the option to make a multilingual layout. And people would use this and then complain that they need to manually copy over their stuff and then manually copy over their changes to their stuff, when they may be better off if they just ignore this option and just make the block visibility and views filters and other things, which would fit their use case better. So this may be too much in the face for people to use as the solution for multilingual if we put this as that's where it is.
So my primary concern in all of this is just that it be possible. And so like we have test coverage proving that it is possible. But I'd also like if the user interface we built, even if core doesn't do it, that the user interface is at least nuanced to the point that Contrib could do it easily without having to rewrite a ton of what we've done. So I guess like we probably just need to make sure that even if we don't expose it through the UI is taking multilingual into account.
Yeah. Yeah, I would from these options, the select box is definitely better for the scalability of the languages for sure. In the other case, 10 languages, as in the previous example, would explode the tabs and would re-break the page, etc. So, yeah. And as Roy said, we've explored the select box before for other reasons. It's a bit magical in Drupal that you click on the edit tab and then the select box disappears, and then you click on the layout tab and the select box appears. And if there's more tabs to the right of layout, then they would be somehow pushed off or something. I don't know. So those would need to be considered.
Yeah, this is like
incorporate the select list in the tab. So.
Yeah, these are API additions to local tasks or something.
Yeah. Yeah, some markup something on the local task or something like that. Yeah.
Or like, could it be some sort of limit feature where like Drupal just automatically detects that more than a certain number of sub-tab tasks exist for the task that we're on and magically does this?
But I don't know, I wouldn't do that, but no. I wouldn't do that. I think if it's intentionally done like that, maybe incorporated in the tab is fine.
Okay, yeah, that would make sense because it makes it very clear that that's inside of that concept.
Yeah. Cool. Any other things around this?
That was it. Thank you.
Cool.
Yeah, so to summarize, no.
Easy.
Well, yeah.
That was easy.
Yes, but no, but.
That's always the best in UX when you can just say no to a feature, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So, Commerce Setup Wizard. Up next. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, I'll share my screen here.
And also, actually, you know what, I would have to say probably not the end of the week, because then we also have to look at the UI that we like that.
Okay, so you guys can all see my screen?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So, I guess around the motivation for creating some sort of wizard for the commerce module is that when you first install commerce on Drupal 8 and you visit the configuration screen, you're presented with this, which doesn't really give you a direction on what you actually need to do in order to get e-commerce set up on your website. So the first thing that you actually need to do is create a store. So you start going through the store links and add your store. You might fill out all your details in here, and then you get down to the default currency, and there's nothing available to you out of the box. So that's kind of the first roadblocker. You actually need to go back and create a currency before you can actually create your store. So go in here, you can create your actual currency, or just import one from the list here. So that's actually the very first step, which is kind of hidden under multiple menu items, as you can see. So what I've proposed is to build an actual wizard. Right now, I just have it as a menu item. The idea is that once you install Commerce and visit the main admin page, you would be presented with the wizard, basically just outlining what you need to do in order to get Commerce set up on your website. So we just have some placeholder text in here right now, but essentially the idea is that Contrib modules could hook into the wizard so they can add a step into the actual step system. So I'll just go through here. Again, I don't have any actual information being pulled in, but this would essentially be like the store details page where you actually create your store. I guess I can pull open the design here too. So we're going to chop out a lot of the information on this actual ad store. The only required stuff that you need out of the box right here would be a name and your email address, and then the rest of these are going to be handled just through like hidden fields and things like that, or just straight through the software. So I built kind of a stepper component. And it's basically going to amalgamate a bunch of these screens where you have to start configuring things like your store, the currency, tax rates, where you actually see your little cart block on the front end, and then some payment to actually start collecting money on your commerce setup. So you basically will just go through the components. Once it hits the currency step, based on your location, it's going to determine what currency it should default to. Otherwise, if it's wrong, you can just select I'll set it up later. So it'll be skipped. And so, yeah, you're just going to go through this kind of stepper component, and then you'll be able to create your store. If you hit edit, it basically just goes back into the steps where you can start to change things up. And so eventually, when we get all the software finished up, it should look something like this.
I'm seeing either I can confirm or I'll set it up later, but what if I want to change it?
So there,
Okay,
you'll still be able to change, like, for example, if the currency isn't correct, you can set it up later where we're going to actually push them off to the like main configuration page, because you might, your store, because you need some sort of physical address in commerce, but say you want to like collect like Bitcoin or something like that, it's not obviously going to be able to determine that you want to start collecting Bitcoin. So you will have to go in and set up like a custom currency or select a different one.
And are you not going to try to do that directly in the wizard?
No, I think the idea is because if we have too much configuration options, it's going to probably steer people away from using the actual wizard. They might just hit exit and then start trying to set things up. So that was kind of the idea around the wizard, is to make a really simplified form, and then you can go back in and start configuring different items as you please.
And if I visit the wizard after I have manually set some things up, like what happens?
Ideally, you won't be able to go back into like your wizard once you start adding, start configuring things. I guess the problem is like
Maybe it's a first time setup.
Yeah, it's a first time setup for sure. So if you decide to exit it, but you still don't have a store created, then you know, you might still be presented with the wizard because it's not going to, like, we're going to check to see if you actually have a store, a currency, any like tax rates, things like that configured on your
Okay,
commerce.
so you might be like getting super technical here. You might be introducing custom access control checks on all the existing commerce menu items so that they literally have to go through the wizard before they can do anything.
The very first step, ideally, would be to force the user into the install wizard. And then if they wanted to do, you know, like custom configuration, they would be able to basically hit that main menu.
Is all of this temp stored?
Say that again?
The configuration that you're putting together here, is it all sitting in temp store, or are you like literally doing partial configs of the site live as you click through these?
I'm not too sure on what you mean by that. Sorry. Like
when you add like store details the first time, are you, well, I guess like you don't have it actually happening yet, right? But like the store form would show up there. When I hit like next, would it save that store right now? So I have like a partial working commerce install, or like, are you going to save everything all at once and then
I think we want to save it at the end, just in case you bail out, exiting the wizard or something like that. We don't want to save too much details, just because there is going to be some information. Well, actually, if you go on to like the if you go on to the main add store page, there are some elements that are saved on this form, but we're essentially like, we don't want to have to manage two different sets of forms, you know, one being in the wizard and one being on the actual store. So we're just going to pull in some of these fields and then save them. So like address will obviously be pulled into a different step. So essentially all of these, which, you know, you can see most of the top ones here are required, will get saved all at the same time. So if you were to edit your store, you didn't have like name and email address filled out, but you didn't have an address added to your store or something like that.
Okay.
Yeah. And basically we're just trying to clean up a lot of the UI on here, like owner, you don't really know like how often are you actually going to change that? You probably wouldn't do that in your actual wizard. You're not going to set up like the owner. It's going to be you, right? I mean, if you were to have like a multi-site setup and you're trying to change the owner to a different user, you could always come back into this config screen. But I think even this page, which, you know, part of the roadmap will be cleaning up a lot of these configuration screens as well, trying to hide some of these items like owner. Doesn't really have too much of an impact on your weight, I guess, for field sets and things like that.
Right, but so bottom line, you don't intend on just like IEFing these forms into your various steps? No,
not really.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's still obviously some more discussion. This is a pretty new idea that's come along, but yeah, just trying to basically configure all these different pages, all these different forms, and get you set up with a commerce install rather than having to find your way around.
Which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
So it's definitely a useful exercise.
Mhm, for
Instead
sure.
of all the pogo sticking across different admin pages, you string them together in one process to get
Yeah.
people started.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, there's probably lots of modules and things even in core that could kind of use the same sort of treatment. So
Would you be able to configure the steps in the wizard, or is this a pre-cooked 6 steps process?
no, so right now it's just like a shell. It's just built using like the form API, but
Yeah.
it will be like turned into more of like a hook system where other contrib modules could essentially add another step. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So these are kind of like the 6 pain points from speaking with some of the guys here and commerce guys. So just try to hammer these annoyances out, and then hopefully build upon this.
So is this a completely new API that you're building right here, or are you building on top of something?
No, this is it's basically just another module in the commerce modules. But it's there's no like API changes as of yet. It's just basically like a stepping system.
Okay.
That's custom for commerce, but
I don't want to like sideline this entire conversation, but why don't you ping me after this, because I maintain an entire wizard system. So.
Oh, okay, right on, cool. I'll definitely message you on Slack.
Yeah. Yeah, I also really like this this way, because then other people don't have to find out what they need to do. For this interface, this reminds me of if you try to test a module or Drupal core, it simply test me. There is an interface to install this thing. I'm wondering if we should use this similar layout for it. I'm not sure where that interface is coming from, but maybe it's yeah, same interaction.
Sure. Whereabouts are you?
So if you, for example, Drupal core or something, I was trying this afternoon as if you type Drupal, yeah, then if you launch sandbox, then you will see interface.
The default Drupal installer, you mean?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it has a similar idea. You need to configure this, configure that, then you have something ready for you.
Yeah, there's steps in it, but the forms are not in the actual steps. There's a list to the left. Step 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, exactly.
So I think what I like about this is I think this way it's a bit clear. You are not really you're moving from pages, but there's like a clear thing always visible to tell you where you are, so you don't lose the context of your process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just noticed you can you actually go back in this?
That's something we can improve. Of course, I'm more
Not in course.
No.
Yeah.
Installer, no.
I'm just thinking of the consistency between these two. But then later we have a pattern where we can reuse if we need this onboarding thing for a feature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and visually Core's installer is nice, but don't go looking at the code.
Chris, do you have examples of what kinds of things people use your stepper
Wizard
for?
Yeah.
Wizard, yeah.
So media is using it for media placement, I believe. Page Manager obviously is basically just an enormous wizard. There are a number of different use cases for it at this point. I think even the migrate, some of the migrate stuff is making use of it. So like as an API, it's worked out pretty well thus far. There are a handful of like small sort of technical issues with it. but like the UI that we're seeing presented here, it has a theming component to it, so that you could provide your own, like, oh, I want it themed this way, and it comes with 2 by default. You can go back and forth between the steps. It's really more of a like the visual system that's sitting there today is much more in line with, like, oh, I changed the entire page I was on, and I want to just like step forward or backward. But it does provide like a breadcrumb that you can get from one step to another if you want to like skip steps and say like, oh, I'm on step 3, but I want to go back to step 1. So, I mean, I'm not saying like it's a one-for-one perfect with what's sitting here, but with a little bit of effort, it could probably be aligned relatively easily. The big difficulty in that is, you know, like one of the things Aaron said really early on was giving Contrib access to alter and change steps. And that's like a feature I've been meaning to get into it for a while. So I'll admit a certain degree of like selfishness in wanting to have a system that actually needs it. But the API is pretty robust and pretty well used across a number of significant Contrib modules at this point, and even has some test coverage. So, and it's just in CTools directly. Like if you install CTools, you've got it.
It's there, yeah. So Aaron, sounds like maybe worthwhile to check out, right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, maybe we can try to align. And sorry, it is in for Drupal 8.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you download CTools 8x 3x, you'll have it.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I can check that out for sure.
So I'm gonna play the card for the ignorant designer, but speaking in a visual way, I kind of agree with Chinyu because I imagine that I completely forgot about the technical things, the technical stuff. I think visually it could be, for example, move the titles, like add some details, enter the store's locations to the left, and then the buttons to the right. I don't know exactly how, but visually I think it could look closer and try to, I don't know, reuse a similar visual pattern. I'm not going to say the same markup or the same anything, but I would say that it will be good to like at least make some efforts to have similar patterns for wizards, at least vertical wizards. I don't know if they are, I don't know.
They're back as 20.
Just, it was the ignorant designer card.
Yeah, and getting back into like the technical weeds of what you just said, like at least from my perspective, adding adding the theme stuff to do this to the API that I'm maintaining would be relatively simple.
Cool.
We could add that into CTools itself, and then anybody could opt into having a wizard that operates like that.
Okay. Food for thought, Aaron.
Yeah, definitely. No, thank you guys. I'll check those out.
That was pretty good. It was like.
All right. Thanks for showing what you're working on. Looks good.
No worries.
And
Super
very
good.
useful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.
Indeed.
Yeah, thanks. So we have a couple more minutes. Do we want to go into Roy's issue? I think we would.
I am prepared, sort of,
Cool.
and
Cool.
hopefully, let's see, the screen share button works. Yeah. You are screen sharing, it says.
Yeah, it works.
Okay. Yeah, I hope that. So the issue is, let's see. I had it in the notes, of course. Oops. Where's the notes? the issue is node 2574721. Here it is. It's about it's on the extend page. On small screens, the links to configure help your module disappear right now. Let me see if I can show. So it's about these help permissions configure links. These live on the extend page, these modules, right? Help configure, help permissions configure. You already have to expand that section, right, to even see this on desktop. And the problem is they're just not accessible right now on small screens. If we think people don't enable modules on phones, then that probably means they will. So we want to be Drupal and make things possible, also on small screens. So there's an issue already for it, and it's this one, 2574721, and it proposes to wrap those links in our drop button. Also on desktop, so they would be immediately visible and available on desktop as well. And they would stay available in small screens, as you can see here. I think we have a working patch, and this is basically down to, I guess, front-end code review right now. We didn't find a nice way to align and float these buttons to the right in a way that well, minimizes the space they take, but leaves options for those more verbose languages that have longer labels inside these buttons, for those buttons to dynamically scale. So I talked with JC Ventura about this a month ago in Frankfurt, and we couldn't find a very good way to fit everything in the minimum space. And it looks like other admin forms didn't either, and just give those buttons more than enough space so that longer labels can will work as well. This is one of those usability issues that's not necessarily part of a big initiative, but it's still annoying to exclude these links from people on smaller screens. I think it's mostly down to a front-end code review, not so much a usability discussion. Of course, people can still say that they don't think it's a good idea, but you're happy to free to do so. I wanted to call this issue out if people feel that they are able to review this, maybe find an elegant way to minimize space that can still grow, or confirm that no, that's just not going to happen with CSS, etc. Then much obliged if somebody could review this and tell us what's up. So then I think we can get this issue to the finish line. So that's provide access to action links in the modules page on small screens, 2574721. Thank you for your attention.
These are going to stay in the dropdown even when you expand like the text on the
Yeah, so even on desktop, they would not be hidden behind the description anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, I have
it's
some.
Less pretty, more useful, I think.
Yeah, I have some concern about this this interaction, because those are actually small element, but there are 2 buttons in there, and the drop down is a very tiny little one. I think my finger won't work for this, I think. So, but I realized this is a pattern for Drupal a lot, like when save and publish, for example, save on publish. But I think on mobile, this is a general problem.
Good point.
Yeah.
The hit area of this little arrow.
Yeah, because there's no space between these 2 items, 2 parts. That's my concern.
Yeah, that's a general drop button problem on mobile. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We could create another issue for this, I think. But as to this one, maybe I'm more thinking, if we have a button on the same row, just to expand this item where you see other links with more space. Yeah, that could work for me.
I think that's what I was thinking. Maybe it could stay as is in desktop environments. Maybe there's something magic we can do that if it's on a touch device, then we don't show a default link, but a general settings or edit or change things label to that would be the whole of the button, and that would show the options inside.
Yeah, expand or something.
Yeah, expand. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we call them operations, but we won't use that. Yeah. So that's also very good feedback for this issue. Just wanted to highlight one of those many other usability issues we have lying around. So,
yeah.
Thanks for that.
Yeah, thank you.
Awesome.
I have nothing else.
Yeah, that was all the topics we had.
Yes, and we're out of time. So. Thanks for your attention and attendance and input, everybody. See you next time.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming and
Thank you all.
thanks for working on these things. Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.